After what feels like a decade of campaigning, the United States presidential election will finally be decided this week. Hopefully. Now, we don't normally talk about politics here at Defunct Games, but this seems like the perfect time to buck tradition and talk about that one time a developer tried to turn President Bill Clinton's cat into the next big video game hero. That's right, we're gonna dive into the baffling and misguided world of Socks the Cat Rocks the Hill, a Super NES platformer that was almost released in the mid-1990s before being cancelled at the very last second. This is a weird game with an even weirder history, which makes it perfect for 2020. So turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the story and ending for Socks the Cat Rocks the Hill on the Super Nintendo. This is Game Over, the early years. Okay, so I think some context is probably required. As I'm sure you already know, it's common for presidents to adopt pets that end up becoming minor celebrities. Barack Obama had Bo, George H.W. Bush had Millie, and Richard Nixon, of course, had Checkers. Now, when Bill Clinton moved into the White House in 1993, he brought his 4-year-old cat Socks along with him. As you can imagine, this black and white short-hair kitty was quickly turned into a superstar, thanks to starring in books, finding his way onto novelty shirts, hosting Larry King Live as an April Fool's joke, and even cameoing in a bunch of popular cartoons. And if you really want a taste of just how popular Socks was at the time, look no further than the Violent Femmes music video for their biggest hit, Blister in the Sun, which found the band dressing up as a cat in order to assassinate Socks. Yeah! The point I'm trying to make is that Socks the Cat was popular. I mean, he wasn't landing multi-million-dollar movie deals like Jim Carrey or topping the charts like Hootie and the Blowfish, but he was one of the few recognizable faces in Washington, D.C. that everybody could get behind, no matter if they were a Republican or a Democrat. So with that context, was it really that crazy for Kaneko to announce a Super NES and Genesis game starring this adorable furball? Well, the answer is yes, it was still crazy. But this was a time for crazy, misguided decisions. Just look at the Home Improvement game or Shaq Fu. Who greenlit Shaq Fu? What ultimately sets this story apart is that Kaneko went out of business before they had a chance to release Socks the Cat Rocks the Hill. But not before sending it to magazine critics for review. Electronic Gaming Monthly mostly gave it 5s and 6s, while GamePro complained about the flat, cartoony graphics and phony meow sounds. Both magazines agreed that the politics-themed bosses were the highlight, and that's about it. Now, for more than 2 decades, these reviews would more or less be the only hands-on impressions that we would have. And then, back in 2016, a company named Second Dimension started a crowdfunding campaign to obtain the rights to this long-forgotten game and officially release it to the masses. And you know what? It worked! The project got funded, and 26 years after first reading those EGM reviews, I can finally play the game for myself. Man, sometimes the internet is great. Unfortunately, the backstory is a lot more interesting than the actual game. The story involves shadowy figures trying to steal a nuclear missile launch unit in the dark of night and accidentally catnapping our hero Socks. The first kitty narrowly escapes the well-dressed thieves at their hideout, only to discover that their boss was former independent candidate H. Ross Perot, who ended up helping Clinton win the 1992 election by getting around 19% of the vote. We also discover that he's working with Richard Nixon, the disgraced president who died during the making of this game. Yeah, that's not great timing. Alright, now that he's escaped captivity, Socks makes his way to the Capitol by dodging paparazzi and protesters with vague signs that read "No" and "Whatever." He tries to shake the shady thieves by running into the Treasury building, where everybody is worried about the deficit and pumping out green sludge for some reason. Even more curious is what former President Gerald Ford is doing there. You can tell that it's the 38th US president because he's constantly falling down. And that's something that he did once. The next stop for Socks is the Supreme Court, which means bouncing on the head of a few justices and then facing former President Jimmy Carter. You know, the guy who made no appointments to the Supreme Court in his one term in office. Well, I suppose this appearance of Oliver North in the Pentagon level makes a little more sense, but it's still pretty questionable. He was best known at the time for his connection to the Iran-Contra scandal, as well as a failed Senate race the year that Socks the Cat Rocks the Hill would have come out. And we can't talk about Oliver North without mentioning his boss, Ronald Reagan. He's presented here as an almost zombie-like figure, all while Nancy Reagan opens up wine bottles high above the action. Now, it's probably worth mentioning that the then 83-year-old Reagan was diagnosed with having Alzheimer's disease around the making of this game, so there's that. Anyway, quickly moving on, Socks speeds through the secret passage he knows about in the sewer in order to get back to the White House. But wait, what does he find when he finally gets there? That's right, it's Bill Clinton's biggest opponent in the 1992 election and one-term president, George H.W. Bush. Wait, hold on. Was he behind this dastardly plan all along? Was he the one controlling Nixon and Ford and Carter? And if so, what was he gonna do with the nuclear launch unit he stole? Also, where did that device even go? Oh man, I have so many questions. I sure do hope they're all answered in this ending. Let's find out. Here's what happens next. Okay, so obviously Socks the Cat was never gonna answer all of our burning questions. I mean, it barely has a story, so why would anybody expect it to explain what's going on? Instead, what we get is an all too brief ending where Socks teams up with Chelsea and Bill Clinton to work the saxophone. You know, because he did that once on Arsenio while campaigning. We all remember that, right? Wow, this game really does have all of the references. Well, all the references except for the Monica Lewinsky stuff, since that, of course, hadn't happened yet, but I guarantee that it definitely would have been in the game if this happened a few years later. Look, this is a crummy ending, but that's also true of the story and painfully dated political jokes. And they're not just dated now, but they were actually dated at the time. I mean, honestly, how many gamers in 1994 even remembered that Gerald Ford fell down the stairs in the 1970s? Oddly enough, the most satisfying part of the game were the short interludes where Socks the Cat was thwarting the rodent thieves between every level. These are by far the best parts of the game, and to prove that, we're gonna end this episode by showing you a supercut of all the cinemas, just like you would have seen if you had actually played Socks the Cat Rocks the Hill. Alright, roll that footage. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, the early years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes every Monday. Now here's the question I have for you. What is your favorite politics-themed game? I mean, it doesn't have to be about election politics or even real-life politics. There are just so many games out there with fictional politicians and all kinds of stuff like that. Go ahead and let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, I can't believe we're in November. Man, we have so much to get through this month. Starting with a bunch of reviews, including Bouncer's Story and Panko Park. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,